This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
You've seen and read my 3 Pillars ebook, and now I'm proud to announce my new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship, and it's now out and ready for reading. This new book of mine is a full-length version of the teachings of the 3 Pillars, and in it I show you how to walk in the integrity of eternal universal laws, in step with the law of attraction to consistently create the life you desire. Now, if you've ever wondered just why you can't consistently manifest all the good, loving, abundant, healthy, and happy things you desire, my new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, will reveal the key in how to do just that. Plus, help you build a rock-solid personal foundation that will stand strong for the ages. Get your copy today. My new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship by Carl Gruber. Available now in ebook and paperback on Amazon.com. Hey, welcome, my awesome friends. This is the podcast World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment. I am your host, Carl Gruber, and today is episode number 99 of this show, and I am over the moon excited to have back one of my all-time favorite guests, Calgary, Alberta, Canada's own Fiona Williams. And not only is Fiona one of the world's best teachers of the non-dualistic spiritual principles as taught in A Course in Miracles, but she's also a clinical hypnotherapist and a certified life coach. On top of that, she's a best-selling author, having written and published 2 children's books, My Mind Book and What Do I Do with a Negative Thought? And now her newest book, an adult-oriented book called Awakening Your Right Mind. And I tell you, Fiona, welcome live from New Zealand via Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Fiona Williams, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Carl. It's so wonderful to be back.
So you live in Canada, but you're now in New Zealand right now for a whole month. Wow, you forgot to take me.
I know. Yeah, my sister said the same thing. Yeah, we're visiting here for a month and just going to enjoy and relax and soak it all up. Take a break from winter.
Absolutely, yeah. And even where I live in Ohio, it's not quite as cold as it gets in Alberta, Canada.
Yeah, exactly. You need to take a breather.
Yeah, I'm ready. But I'm honestly, audience, all my viewers and listeners, I am not lying when I say Fiona Williams is one of my favorite people. I consider her a friend and a colleague. She's been consulted me on spiritual things. God bless her, such a beautiful person. But Fiona, it is hard to believe, this is your second time back on World Awakenings. You were first on the show back in December of 2019 on episode 21, and this is episode 99.
Incredible. Just incredible. Yeah, you highlight so many teachers' work. It's wonderful.
Well, and the thing is, we chatted just before, kind of in the old paradigm of the world, because only a couple of months after that, the whole paradigm and world went nutso.
Yeah, everything changed. Fear became dominant, that's for sure. Yeah.
Well, and many of my guests here have been talking about that. We have entered a time of evolution of humankind. We're going through. We're raising our awareness of back being connected totally to source. I've had many channels and mediums on here and teachers saying that we're actually going through a change, moving into the 5D instead of the 3D world, which is hard to wrap your head around.
It really is. I mean, you're used to what you're used to. It's your perception of things. But, as spiritual students, we have to embrace one of those qualities, which is highlighted in A Course in Miracles, which is open-mindedness. So gently just allowing your mind to be open to bringing in new information, experiencing that information. And I think it's very healthy for us to have an open mind. And, what we think of today can totally change tomorrow, as we learned with COVID. But that can also be used in the positive as well. Imagine who you are a month from now, if you embrace the spiritual principles you really value, or things of that nature, just giving yourself a chance to open your mind and experience. And I always like to say, just let yourself be surprised. Mm-hmm. When you connect with your spiritual self, just let yourself be surprised, because you will be. You will be surprised in a good way. Really glad you mentioned open-mindedness too, because I think I mentioned before we came on here, I've been going through the manual for teachers section in A Course in Miracles, and one section was the 10 characteristics of a teacher of God, and number 10 was open-mindedness. It is indeed. Yep, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't accept these ideas of unconditional love, unity, and forgiveness without having an open mind. Because, since we've been little babies, we've been entrained and programmed into the egoic thought of separation and lack and attack and all of that stuff.
Yeah. And also to think that we're limited, right? The ego mind very much wants you, it's afraid of your power. Your mind's power, and especially your power to choose against it, because the ego survives through your belief. So the ego really wants you to feel like a victim, to feel limited, to feel helpless and powerless. But that's called the ego paradox, where the ego is using your mind's power, but at the same time, it's telling you you're powerless. Mm. So when we open our minds to that, we're part of something bigger, a pure connection with our source, spiritual beings in this physical experience, everything can change for the better. We're using our power in the right way, because we're using it for benign purposes, for love, for healing, for correction, for peace. And naturally, your experience, your physical experience, is going to exude the effects of that, of those benign qualities. So it's something to keep in mind. What am I using my mind for? Is it for ego, or is it for spirit?
Yeah, and speaking of mind, that's so important. And I mentioned in the intro, you have your new book, of course, Awakening Your Right Mind, which I literally carry with me everywhere I go.
Thank you.
Half of the book underlined, but I think that many people, especially newcomers to understanding A Course in Miracles, the non-dualistic spiritual teachings, don't understand the source of the mind. As a matter of fact, I stole this from your website a little while ago, and it's a quote from the Course. Your mind is the means by which you determine your own condition, because mind is the mechanism of decision. It is the power by which you separate or join and experience pain or joy accordingly. Can you expand on that a little bit? There's a lot there.
There is a lot there. So when, I like to explain the mind that in this physical experience, we experience the mind as split. It's split between the wrong mind of the ego, but also the right mind of spirit. Now, that's just in this physical experience, the split mind experience. Above that, as I like to envision it, there's the one mind of source. And with the one mind of source, the mind's not split at all. But here, where we're working with, this is what we're aware of. This is what we need to acknowledge, is that my mind appears to be split. And at every point, I have a choice to either think with the wrong mind of the ego or the right mind of spirit. My mind is the mechanism for decision in this experience. That's your greatest power as the decision maker, because you are always choosing either for ego or for spirit. And so in this physical experience, that's how we experience our mind, as a decision maker. When our mind's totally healed of the ego mind and we're in the realm of oneness, our mind is pure creation, pure creative ability. So we will get there. But right now, this is our awareness. Our awareness is, I am the decision maker. I am choosing. And that is what my mind is for in this present experience in the physical world.
And that, of course, is how we shape our individual lives through our mind and our decisions and choices. One thing that I really love about the course and the teachings of how your mind works is, of course, in our 3D world, we have the ability to choose in any moment. Either we choose for the ego or we choose for source, our oneness. And most people don't even realize that. But that is the thing. How can people train their mind to choose correctly? I mean, I guess you just have to tune your ear and your mind to hear your source.
Well, when we're in this physical experience, yes, it's absolutely possible to connect with our source because we're one with our source. So that's totally possible. But predominantly, we're going to be connecting with what's called in A Course in Miracles as the voice for our source. And that voice is what is known as the Holy Spirit. Now, we can take that name, Holy Spirit, and release any Christian definitions around there. Holy means whole or oneness. Spirit is what we are. It's formless creation. It's beautiful. So if you can just kind of open your mind to the fact that your connection with your source, your lifeline to your source is this, what we would call the Holy Spirit, or whatever. I like to use the acronym HS, which can also stand for your higher self, right? The part of you that is observing this apart from the ego. So in that regard, we can start the first step would be when you want to become aware of if you're choosing ego or spirit and you want to choose for spirit more, would always be to create that awareness of how you feel. So in A Course in Miracles, Jesus says you can always tell about which teacher you've chosen, the ego or spirit, simply by how you're feeling. And that can help you open up that awareness that, look, I've made a decision that is out of accord with peace, because look at how I'm feeling. And that awareness, that self-awareness really is the first step. And it is the hardest step, right? Because we can become so entrenched in our emotions. We can feel really validated in fear and anger and things of that nature. So we do want to kind of create that space to just go, okay, I need to check in with how I'm feeling. Clearly, if I'm out of accord with peace, that is where I can start to move towards asking spirit for help, which is what A Course in Miracles calls a little willingness, right? The little willingness to just start to see things differently. So that's really where it begins. But as you continuously choose for spirit over the ego, as you catch yourself thinking with the ego and you go step it back a bit and ask spirit to judge things for you and to take this pain from you or this psychological suffering from you, as you start to do that more and more, it becomes your habit. And then you start to recognize that when you think with the ego, it actually starts to feel icky. You feel kind of like you need to take a shower or something, right? That's how I like to describe it. So, and that shows that you're really starting to create the habit of using your right mind, asking spirit for support, asking spirit, because you recognize that there's a choice and that you don't have to stay stuck in the ego. The ego would love for you to think that you're stuck in it, right? Because it needs your mind's power and belief in order to survive. In A Course in Miracles, we're taught if we didn't believe in the ego, it simply would cease to be. And that's a very powerful statement. When we're suffering in any form, recognizing that this is my belief in this that is feeding this. And incrementally, I need to start to change my belief. And that happens through repetition, a gentle repetition, a gentle correction of the trajectory of your thinking, turning to spirit. Because right now we want to recognize the ego's a habit. So don't beat yourself up. Don't feel guilty. That's the ego sneaking back in again. Just recognize, oh, there's that ego thought again. Here I'm judging again. I'm upset again, whatever it might be, however it might manifest. And then just go, okay, but now I have a choice. Now that I'm aware, I have this choice to ask spirit for help. And one thing I also really want to mention here is sometimes the reasons for why we're upset can be, very tough, a major challenge, maybe suddenly losing a loved one or getting a diagnosis that's really scary, things of that nature. You're not being asked to, switch over to your right mind right away. You're allowed to have your feelings. You're allowed to grieve. You're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to be normal. You're allowed to be angry. It's just when those things, those feelings, those emotions subside, you want to start to choose for the Holy Spirit, your right mind. You want to start to ask for help out of it. But if you've already created the habit of turning to your right mind, when you're feeling that sadness or anger, you're actually going to start to invite the Holy Spirit in a little quicker. So you'll just start to notice that you don't have to do this alone. Well, but it is normal. Mm-hmm.
Well, I really like the fact that you pointed out the simplicity of using your mind, that if you don't feel good, then you're out of alignment with source. And if you do feel good, then you are in alignment. And, this is very hard for people who have grown up with the ego mind, just always blah, 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 blah in their ear the entire time. And when we don't good, then we start judging ourselves and other people. We feel guilty and feel shame. And what I love about the teachings in the Course, it says, when you make a wrong choice and you don't feel good, Spirit will always say, my son, choose again. Yeah. Choose again. It will never judge you. It will never. No. And that alone, the fact that you are aware that you can choose now like this to move from feeling bad and out of alignment and stuck in the ego to alignment of feeling good and happy and connected to source, that is a freeing feeling.
Very freeing. It's liberating. It's empowering. You start to get the sense that you truly are something than all the problems you thought you were. Mm-hmm. You are so much more than that. You are a very powerful decision maker. And in every moment, are you exercising that power, whether you know it or not? That's what I love to highlight in my work. And so we're taught in A Course in Miracles that the mind is always creating. It never sleeps. Yeah. And in that regard, I want to use my mind very carefully. In our world, the mind has been seen as an enemy. There's many people who like to diminish its ability and say, thoughts are, whatever, don't worry about them, la, la, la. It doesn't help, because you are diminishing the one thing that is going to get you out of here, which would just be a nice way of saying becoming enlightened. If you want out of the ego's thought system, you have to start to appreciate that you are powerful. Your mind is powerful. Right. And so that is what A Course in Miracles is really highlighting, right? Because it's also self-described as a course in mind training. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that is something to really recognize, that the focus is on the mind, because when the mind is used correctly, that's how you get back to that oneness. That's how you become enlightened. And when you're in that state of oneness, it's described in A Course in Miracles that mind and spirit are working together as one. And we can start to think of the mind as being the fountain, and that spirit is the water that springs forth. So they come together as one formless creative power of pure love and creation. We can no longer afford to diminish the power of our minds.
I think if people actually sat and contemplated the thought of how powerful they really are, then you would understand Jesus' statement that there is nothing that I did that you cannot do, and even greater. I mean, that's amazing.
It's so amazing. And I love that in A Course in Miracles, because he's like, I'm your big brother. There's no difference between you and I, other than I know that only God is, our source is, and there's nothing else for me. But right now, you just have some beliefs that there is something else. So I'm going to help you out. I'm going to be like, hey, I'm your big brother. I'm your equal. If I did it, you can do it. That's what I mean, is it's so empowering. It's so motivating to just, and I can recognize how that might be a struggle for some people to believe. And in that regard, I just like to say, then just let yourself get there. Yeah. You don't have to believe all of this right now. That's not what it's about. It's about beginning to train your mind to start to think in a different way, to connect with spirit, and allowing that inspiration, which means in spirit, those inspired thoughts, that guidance, that healing, to start to flow through you. And as you receive the evidence in your own mind, throughout your life, that will become evidence enough for you that this works. And each and every one of us is going to experience that differently. So there's no point in comparing. Just trust that you are a fundamental part of your source. It is your birthright to connect with your source and to receive inspired thoughts. This is your inheritance, is the peace of God. And so we just need to start to create that habit of turning to our right mind, so we don't get so entrenched in the ego anymore. And our minds start to heal of the ego, and then we return back to that full awareness of being one with our source.
And any of the viewers or listeners who are just now hearing this type of thing for the very first time or just getting started, you mentioned this earlier, and I love this. All you need is a little willingness to get started. That's all you need. An open heart and an open mind.
Yeah, exactly. And you can just simply, I think we all, to some degree, get to that point here or there, maybe multiple times throughout our life, or there's maybe one major moment in our lives where we're just like, things are really tough. This is not working for me, how I'm functioning right now. Something is amiss. And it is that point, that critical point, where you can really start to think differently and just go, as is lovingly put in A Course in Miracles, that I can start to choose a better way. That something can be done differently. And that's what A Course in Miracles provides for you, that better way.
Yeah, I love it. And it helps me every single day. Speaking of the mind, the power of the mind, and this is kind of a big question. How do you feel, what role does our mind play on the collective mind of humanity? I mean, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and that can be, that can be a big one for people. Like, am I causing the war in Ukraine? Like, did I cause COVID? So you really want to take a step back for a moment and recognize that we're really having kind of two different experiences of the mind. There's the unconscious level of the mind, and from a metaphysical standpoint, this part of the mind is the collective ego mind that projected out this entire universe. That includes the experiences that we come to experience, right? So, witnessing a war in our world, or witnessing a pandemic, or witnessing a car accident, or whatever it might be. That comes from the unconscious mind, and unconscious means we're not aware of it. It comes from a larger part of the mind, and that is where the collective ego mind is. But then if we just take a step back and we go here, now what I'm working with is my individual perception of what that collective ego mind has projected out. Projection makes perception, as we're taught in A Course in Miracles. So I'm perceiving this world, this projection, and that is where I am the decision maker. So you, Carl, you're have a different perception than me. I have a different perception, and we all have different perceptions, right? And when we perceive our world, that is where we have an opportunity to exercise that decision maker part of our minds, to just go, okay, here's my perception. This is how I'm viewing that collective ego mind experience. This is what I think of the war in Ukraine. This is what I think of COVID. And that is where you exercise your power in this world, is through your own individual perceptions. Right? So don't feel guilty, essentially. Don't feel guilty for something you're not aware of. We're not aware of that unconscious projection and how it's all going to play out. If we did, it would be too much for our conscious minds to comprehend. You are in charge of your own individual perception. And that is, again, what A Course in Miracles is helping you with, to shift from the ego perception, which is called misperception, to the Holy Spirit's true perception, where we truly perceive things correctly. So where the ego would perceive that person's my enemy, and, they're judgmental and I'm judging them, and it goes on and on and on. Fear, punishment, all of that. The Holy Spirit will truly perceive things as this is a mistake to be corrected. Mistakes can always be corrected. The healing of the mind is natural. That enemy is a person calling out for love. And that can look very vicious, for sure, and I respect that. But when we look behind that ego facade, the Holy Spirit is seeing the truth, that this is a call for love. There is no fear. There's always the answer of love. However that looks, it can look very, very different. So like for a criminal, that would be rehabilitation, mental rehabilitation, whatever it might be, right? For someone else, like a colleague who's being, feisty, maybe it might warrant a loving conversation at some point if the opportunity allows that. It can look so different. But the Holy Spirit will allow for loving correction, to just say, we can truly perceive this. Yeah.
I think that's an aspect that many people have trouble understanding is, so let's say you have a spouse that you're constantly arguing with, or a coworker that you just hate, or blah, blah, blah. But it really are, those people are calling out for love. And
Absolutely.
And if you're on the other end, you go, huh? What? The guy just flatted the tires on my car, and that's a call for love. It is, but that's the thing, you have to stay with the study of all this. So wow, this is just amazing. I really appreciate everything you're doing. We're talking to Fiona Williams, currently in New Zealand, in Auckland, but from Alberta, Canada. Fiona, how big and important healing is to me as a facilitator of a very big group of Power of 8 healers on Facebook. You've joined in a number of our healing sessions. Healing is still interesting to me. I'm still working on how it all happens, but it's so important. And of course, the Course talks quite a bit this. And in your book, I underline a line that says, healing is an attitude. It's a state of mind where you believe that healing is not only possible, but natural. What?
It is. It's and what I mean in that regard is that when you go through particularly trying times, when I say healing is an attitude, I essentially mean right-mindedness, or we can also call miracle-mindedness, where I'm going to perceive this truly with the help of spirit. Because what you want to recognize is that healing is a result. It is the result of correcting the trajectory of your thinking. So, of course, the ego is the state of mind that makes all problems. There are no solutions within the ego mind because, again, the ego mind survives through your belief, and it needs you to believe in separation because the ego was made through separation, believing that you're separate from your source. And so to preserve itself, the ego makes problems. So when you are encountering those problems, you are not going to find an effective solution through the ego because that's not what the ego is for. That's not its function. And it's just that simple, that That doesn't attack anything. That's just how the ego functions. It makes problems in an attempt to preserve itself. The right mind is where correction is truly made. Now, that is not done by us, essentially. It is by inviting the Holy Spirit through our minds, by correcting the trajectory of our thinking, as I say, the decision maker. And when we invite Spirit in, that we have corrected the trajectory of our thinking, we've invited Spirit in, and that is where healing starts to occur. So choosing for right-mindedness, choosing for the miracle, that is natural. That is why healing is natural. And when you start to develop your right mind and create it, using it as a habit, that is what I mean, is that healing is an attitude. It's like, I don't have to roll over and take this.
Yeah.
I am a powerful being, and I choose for healing. And so in my book, I describe that I went through Meniere's disease, which is a debilitating vertigo disease. I went through PTSD. I have been through hardships, as we all have. And at no point was I willing to accept what the ego had to say about it. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't have any trials. I had fear, I had anger, I had panic attacks, but I chose for the Holy Spirit. I chose for my right mind. I was super vigilant for that because I saw what the ego had brought me. I didn't want more of that. Also, in A Course in Miracles, we repurpose our sickness, our challenges, our psychological suffering as opportunities to heal. So when we repurpose all of this stuff and give it the intention of healing, your mind always needs a direction. And when I give an issue, a problem, the intention of healing, the focus of healing, then you can imagine what's going to happen, some pretty beautiful stuff, because I'm no longer using it for separation, for pain. So you want to go, where am I focusing my mind? Where am I using my mind's power towards? And so healing is natural. In A Course in Miracles, we're taught that miracles are natural, right? So healing is natural, you know? But also we're taught further, that quote in A Course in Miracles goes, miracles are natural, but when they do not occur, something has gone wrong. And the something that has gone wrong is that we've fallen back into ego mode. Mm-hmm. So when you choose for Spirit and you choose to correct your thinking, it's important to stay there. To just go, no, I'm not going back into this. I remember that I've left this with Spirit. It's okay. I mean, it's a habit. You have to be gentle with yourself, right? But you want to remember that you've asked Spirit for help. You want to allow your mind to heal. And that is done at an unconscious level. Holy Spirit's in charge of that, not you and I. Our choice, our work is to choose that decision maker. Our work is to choose for the Holy Spirit, to apply true forgiveness, to correct, to watch ourselves if we're judging, you know, to make that decision to correct our thinking instead of project it out onto someone, our issues onto someone. That's what we do. But the Holy Spirit's role in this world is to heal. And so you, with your very powerful mind, can choose for that. And so when I was down for hours upon hours with vertigo, and severe vertigo too, you know, I had a choice. I knew I had a choice. And so I was like, this is happening, appearing to happen anyway. So who am I going to go through it with? I'm going to go through it with the Spirit. Like, and that's what I mean by healing as an attitude.
And I'm really glad you brought up your own issues with the PTSD and the Meniere's disease, which you healed yourself of by following these spiritual principles. And also our friend and colleague and past guest here, 𝐏𝐸𝐬𝐬𝐿, she healed herself of severe anxiety. Yeah. And she still has to, you know, use that to keep any fluctuations in that. And so it does work. Well, the beautiful thing that I like about the Course, it teaches us that not only does all sickness start in the mind, but all healing occurs at the level of the mind too. And when I'm in a Power of 8 session and we have, you know, we're on a Zoom call and we have 8 or 10 or 15 people and we're focusing on one particular person with a malady. I have to remember that, as the Course says, you have to look at this individual with this physical problem, or maybe mental, whatever, that there's no difference in the problems. That oh my gosh, you can't let yourself get sucked into this person has cancer. You just have to see them as already healed and already one at home with their source, where they were perfect. And again, that is difficult if you've never been there, but you have to practice that.
Yeah, and that's where I like to say again, be gentle with yourself. You want to let yourself get to the point that this becomes believable for you, right? No one's trying to push against you. It's your own process of, do these concepts make sense for me? And, am I willing to give it a try? And your right mind, your higher self will, guide you accordingly if you're open, right? If you're willing to see if healing truly is possible, you'll start to receive that guidance that you can do this. So with the Meniere's disease, as an example, I had a couple of months before I had a ear, nose, and throat specialist appointment. And I received the guidance that, why don't you try this very powerful A Course in Miracles healing meditation and apply true forgiveness when you feel fearful over these next couple of months and just see how you do. I mean, what else was I doing, right? I got 2 months to wait. And that's where the miracle really occurred. And I had a healing experience, and I've never had vertigo again. So, and that has come in up on 6 years.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So it's and that was truly just inspiration that, I received that guidance and I applied it and it worked. And we're all going to receive that guidance. It's going to look differently for each of us. It really is. For some people, it is going to look like a surgery or whatever it might be, because that's what your mind is going to accept as healing. And that's totally fine. But again, it is about, who am I doing this with? It is always about how you think. And you're absolutely right, Carl, is that behind this physical facade of the Fiona body, I am pure, innocent mind, spirit, one with my source, no different than anyone else. So when you are looking for healing, it's about seeing yourself truly and other people, like in the Power of 8 sessions. That's amazing. Absolutely. Seeing that person is so much more than cancer, than that body, and that doesn't stop that person from doing what they need to do. If they want to do chemo or vitamin C therapy or whatever it might be, that's amazing. That's up to them. But as people who are in their lives, we can always see them truly. Always. And that is the most loving thing you can do. And, that's something that, if I come across a person who is homeless on the street, and, I always am sure to see them truly, that they are so much more than what they perceive as their suffering, because they are more than that. And so, again, it's just a very loving thing to do. And earlier, Carl, you were saying, that, where the problems of the ego, sickness is made in the mind. And we want to pay attention to that, because where the correction needs to be made is where the hiccup happened, where the miscorrection happened. It was just like the mistake happened in the mind, and we need to correct it in the mind. So that's very, very important. And that's what A Course in Miracles and all 365 of its lessons is doing, is helping us to go to the source of where the error happened in the mind and apply the correction. It's that simple.
And, it's interesting when I'm sitting across from a person in a virtual Zoom call and a Power of 8 session, and that person's got, really late stage cancer or something. It is difficult if you're that person. I mean, the whole time it's shouting, I'm a body, I'm a body, I'm a body. I mean, I'm a guy. When we get a cold, we become babies and we just whine. My God, it's hard to get that, I feel like crap, but because, it's hard to get past that. I don't feel correct. I mean, things are not working well. And, your body's just saying, hey, here, but you're right. You have to go into your mind to start the healing process.
Absolutely, because that's where the error was made, always and forever. Now, that doesn't mean you don't do things to comfort the body. Right. Absolutely. If you need to take pain medication, go for it. Whatever you have to do. And I always like to say, then do those things with the Holy Spirit. Again, it's always about how you think. Who am I doing this with? So I'm going to do this with spirit instead of the ego. I accept whatever it is, chemotherapy or whatever it might be, or, even a probiotic. Do it with the Holy Spirit. It's all good, right? So you just want to become increasingly more aware of who you're doing things with. Mm-hmm. Where am I pointing my mind's focus? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's really, really interesting. I'm so grateful we talked about healing. It's such an important topic. I mean, because everybody eventually has something going on with their body, and we have to look at it from that aspect. And I think you're correct too. It's okay to this morning I took an Advil when I got up. It's okay to do those things. You can be human and do those things, but yeah, you have to go back to source for the true, real healing. Wow, this is just a great conversation. You're so it's beautiful, beautiful information flows through you. I do want to talk about an aspect that I really haven't heard much about from you is your certification as a hypnotherapist. Do you still use that? How do you utilize hypnotherapy?
I actually utilize it more for the creation of meditations. I include meditations in my podcasts and in my classes, both in person and online. So when I did hypnotherapy training at the 𝐏𝐸𝐬𝐬 Association for Research and Enlightenment, it was so beautiful. It was just the introduction for me of the power of the mind, the subconscious level, more specifically. That's where hypnosis really hits. And to me, that knowledge now where I carry it forth is the importance of kind of going to a deeper level in your mind where the ego is more subdued, the ego is more quiet, and you're actually just able to embrace more right-minded ideas in a more calm and relaxed way. And you'll actually experience them in a deeper way. If you can imagine that you're in a slightly hypnotic or meditative kind of state, and that's just really all it means, is that you're just not fully in a conscious mind state. You're more in subconscious relaxed mode, is that you start to take in that information in a deeper way, which is really what you need to do. And you'll feel it in a deeper way. So you might even, get a little tear of relief or whatever it might be, because you're in that more relaxed state where your mind is more suggestible and you're going to accept those ideas more. So I think it's such a healthy thing, honestly, to take moments throughout the day to, even for 2 minutes or a minute or 30 seconds, if you can, just close your eyes, quiet your mind, deepen your breath, and just start to still your mind. And that is where you start to go into those lower levels, those lower brainwave levels. And you just start to just feel more relaxed. And then that's easier for you when you're applying the lessons of A Course in Miracles or choosing for your right mind, and you need to calm down. Let's say if you're really amped up from thinking with the ego or you're angry, when you just take those few minutes to calm down, if you can, that's going to really support you when things really start to happen. But it's also going to support you in going, yeah, I'm actually really feeling my connection with my source. I'm actually really feeling peace. I'm actually feeling the efficacy of these right-minded thoughts. So that's why I just really love hypnosis. It really speaks to the power of the mind.
In those lower brainwave frequencies, I believe that's the alpha state.
Yeah, so there's alpha, theta, and delta would be the lower states, but yeah, you'd be more into alpha and theta. So beta is, it's a very analytical brainwave level. That's where we're in right now, just when you're awake. And but it can be a very analytical brainwave, and it can lead to agitation. So I always like to say, if you're not analyzing a physics problem or a math problem, then you shouldn't be analyzing at all. Like your relationship or your weight or what your mother just said or whatever. So, because that is, you're in beta mode, and it can turn into a very agitated state very quickly if you let it. So when you start to go into those lower levels of alpha, and theta, you're just more relaxed. You're not analyzing everything. You're not hyper judging everything. You're just more receptive to spirit's guidance. And that's what I always like to say about the Holy Spirit is you kind of want to get into receiver mode. Right? I've asked for support. I've asked for guidance. I need to step out of beta brainwave level, and I go into alpha and theta and start to receive. So, I receive a lot of guidance in my dreams.
Well, and
in my sleep.
Yeah, in hypnosis, hypnotherapy, our mind does become more suggestible, and it can be misused. So you should be careful when you're getting into that quiet place that you have a right-minded source to come into your mind. Because I think people have been spoiled by on TV over the years. They've seen the hypnotist come on and said, hypnotize a lady, okay, bark like a dog, run around like a chicken now.
Yeah.
We're talking about
yeah,
hypnotherapy here.
Yeah.
So it does work.
Yeah. You always want to invite the Holy Spirit in whenever you do mind work. Always, always, always. And I invite the Holy Spirit in, no matter what I do, right? But definitely if you're going into hypnotic trances or whatever it might be that you feel guided to do, just invite the Holy Spirit to be with you, to be in charge. And that you can be assured that you will be safe.
I love that. The Holy Spirit. I'm going to go back for a moment. I just had this big picture in my mind. You had mentioned earlier that the ego thrives on your problems and conflict. And you being a dog owner, I know, you understand this well. When you put a bowl of food down, the dogs run over and go, and suck up. That's how the ego works. When you're in the midst of drama and trauma and conflict and problems, and the ego jumps in, and it's just like that dog sucking up a bowl and growing stronger and stronger and stronger. If you understand that, then you can reduce that, that effect.
Absolutely. And I love actually 𝐿𝐼𝐸t𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 Tolle, the author of The Power of Now. He put it very well one time where he says, when you have to recognize that the ego needs to come up to be fed. That's what it's coming up for, is it needs to feed. When you recognize what the ego is up to, and that's why I put it in my book, Awakening Your Right Mind. And this is from A Course in Miracles. That's where all that comes from, is the ego's agenda. When you look at what the ego is trying to achieve, why it's trying to feed, why it's hungry, then you start to really go, okay, do I really want to participate in this? Now that I know what the ego is up to, and so even Jesus says in A Course in Miracles, who would embrace madness, when they know what it is? Like, why would you right-mindedly choose for that? So when you start to go, okay, hang on, I recognize what the ego is trying to achieve here. It gives you more of that space to just go, all right, I don't need to participate in this. I can start to, again, choose for the Holy Spirit, and choose for my right mind and start to correct this, because I don't need to stay in it and feed this ego agenda. Because what we need to recognize is that the more we feed the ego, the more we're in that cycle of fear. And it's just going to continue. And you might think that it's, calmed down for a bit and things like that, but it'll rage again. It'll come up to be fed again. If you have not properly corrected your thinking, which would be through true forgiveness, the right-minded principle of true forgiveness, then you have not hopped off the cycle of fear. The ego might calm down for a little bit because it's been fed, but you just want to go, did I actually truly correct that? Did I actually truly forgive it? Right?
Well, we're talking to Fiona Williams, just an amazing teacher of true spirituality and love and truth. Your book, Awakening Your Right Mind, you and I both published books in 2020.
Yeah.
You were kind enough to write a testimonial for my book, but I'm just over the moon and in love with your book. It says, the subtitle is Healing from Fear and Following Spirit with A Course in Miracles. Now, if I read right, this is an expansion on your children's books, right?
Yes, my first children's book, my mind book, I covered the laws of the mind. And in A Course in Miracles, peppered throughout of it are laws of how our minds function. Like thoughts grow stronger the more you share them. As you see others, you will see yourself, things of that nature. And I plucked them out of the course and I wanted to present it to children because I think children, especially being so young, there is such an ideal spot to learn this material and just become aware of how powerful they are. You know, the sooner people start to realize that they're not really as much of victims as they can come across to be, that they have a choice. I think that's very empowering. So I really, really wanted to give that to children. Awakening Your Right Mind is the spiritual version of that book for adults to read. So my mind book is secular in presentation. I don't touch upon concepts like spirit. I just present the laws of the mind for a secular audience. So Awakening Your Right Mind is way more in depth, goes into the wrong mind of the ego's agenda, the ego's laws of chaos. And then it goes into the right mind and the one mind, and then it presents the laws of the mind. So it's a great overview of the mind according to A Course in Miracles.
And I can't recommend that book enough, Awakening Your Right Mind. Absolutely get a copy because it is one of the best things you can do for yourself. Just phenomenal. Just go on Amazon and it's on Call to Mind Books. So make sure you do that. Now, you also, as we wind up here, you have a podcast, you have a website. How can people access you? Just go to, what's your website again?
www.fionamaria.ca, and the podcast tab is just on the homepage, and I have complimentary podcasts there. I cover numerous topics to help people apply the teachings of A Course in Miracles in a very practical way in their life. And as I said, I always like to explain a little bit about, just things that we experience, like a bad mood, hormonal fluctuations, forgiving ourselves, and then more advanced concepts of A Course in Miracles, like the atonement, true forgiveness, and things like that. And then I always end the podcast with a nice guided meditation so people can start to apply and feel the effects, because you are not going to get anywhere if you don't apply these teachings. And that's what I really want to help people with. So the podcast really, really supports people there.
Yeah, it's great. I just listened to a recent one. And whoa, I was looking at my notes. I almost forgot to ask you. You have a set of Awakening the Right Mind cards coming out too.
Oh, yes, my card deck.
Yeah.
I really wanted to, because again, it is about repetition and loving repetition of these ideas to help them sink in, right? We're taught in A Course in Miracles that you want to let these ideas sink deep into your unconscious mind, so they can start to feel real for you and feel applicable. So I created a card deck of teachings from Awakening Your Right Mind. And on the cover are beautiful abstract, backgrounds with a teaching. And then on the back, I elaborate upon that teaching. And then each card deck comes with a stand. So you can just, at your desk or in your bathroom or in your kitchen, whatever it might be, wherever you spend the most time, you put one of the cards and one of the teachings you want to focus on, that week or that day, whatever it might be, because it is about repetition.
Yeah, that is so awesome. Are those available right now?
No, they're literally were sent from the printer yesterday to my address in Calgary. So they will be available when I get back to Calgary at the beginning of February. Awesome. And I can't wait to hammer them out there.
Yeah, you've done a few previews on them and they look really awesome. So, once again, we've been talking to Fiona Williams. Fiona, I can't tell, I love you so much. I appreciate what you do. The world is such a brighter, more loving, happy place because of you. And I want you to enjoy the rest of your vacation in New Zealand.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Carl. And thank you for all that you do. I know we all very much appreciate it.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.